Hello and welcome to Take 6. I am streaming executive producer Thomas Mates filling in for Julie Broughton. She is out on assignment today, but she'll be back for News 6 at 4 with your weather and your forecast for the week. And she'll be joining us again tomorrow back on her normal schedule right here in the hosting position on Take 6. We have a lot of stuff to get to today. We are going to be taking a look at those popular weight loss drugs and how they are starting to impact the economy now they've become so popular and widespread in their use. We're also going to be looking at a court hearing for a man who is accused of firing gunshots on New Year's Eve as a celebration, which ultimately led to the death of a woman, his neighbor. That is going to be coming up in just a few moments. We'll also be taking a look at the latest episode of Florida Foodie. It's with a great guest, the owner of Brewlando here in Orlando, one of the few woman-owned breweries in the entire country. Only about 2% of all breweries are owned by women. We have her on, and she had a great interview with Candace Campos and Lisa Bell. All that'll be coming up in just a few minutes, but first we got to talk about the weather. It is on everyone's mind. It is cold, it is dreary, it is gloomy outside. This is a live look at Daytona Beach in Volusia County. As you can see, it is gray. It just looks cold. It might just give you the shivers just looking at your screen right now. To get a little bit more info on this cold and how long it's going to stick around, how cold it's going to get, we're joined now by News 6 digital meteorologist David Nazario. David, how you doing?
Good, Thomas. How about you?
Not too bad. Real quick, before we get to the forecast and the cold and the downturn, the downturn in the cold. Exactly. The roller coaster, the bungee cord that is Florida weather in the coming days. We got some video in this morning from social media, people making some claims. I think the cold has gone to Florida's head a little bit, and they're starting to let their imagination run away with them. Florida did see a lot of snow. Parts of Florida, I should say. North Florida, the Panhandle especially, saw lots of snow. But people are starting to think they're seeing it in their own backyard. Let's take a look. This is some of that video that we got. People are claiming that we saw flurries overnight. But as you and Candace pointed out this morning to us here in the newsroom, not the case, correct?
Correct, exactly. It looks like flurries. It really does. I mean, to the untrained eye, I will say, that definitely looks like it could be snowing. And then, as Candace had mentioned in her video segment on the topic, obviously you mix the cold temperatures and you're going to think, oh, goodness gracious, we have snow in Central Florida, and that's not the case. What it really is, we have such tiny water droplets. We have to remember that we are underneath Arctic air, and as a result, we have no instability. We don't really have any lift out there, and we don't have a lot of moisture despite being in Central Florida. We're in a whole new air mass. So what moisture is out there is minuscule, and we're looking at teeny tiny water droplets that have the least amount of density or weight to them. You combine that with the winds that have been creating our wind chill for the last couple of days, and that's why it'll look like snow kind of blowing around in the wind. To me, it almost looks like gnats in the middle of the night. That's me.
Yeah, or like you just dusted your house.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, it wasn't snow. We were still sitting at about maybe upper 30s, low 40s for many of us yesterday evening. And even overnight, it wasn't too cold. So not nearly cold enough, let alone moist enough for snowfall. There's still a lot that goes into it that's similar to thunderstorm forecasting, and there was none of that applicable yesterday.
Yeah. So while it wasn't cold enough overnight, I'm prefacing this saying I'm not saying we're going to see flurries or any snowflakes here in Central Florida, but it could definitely get to that cold point that we would need to see for it to happen.
Oh, yeah, and that's the thing, is we're going to have the cold air in place as we go through Friday night into your Saturday morning. But, again, the lifting mechanism, the moisture, all the triggers that you need to come together to produce snowfall, missed it by that much for my Get Smart fans out there. Let's go ahead and rock into some of the info I have for you. I brought this up on my daily web weather update earlier this morning at 11:30, which if you haven't checked that out, I would recommend doing doing so, not only do we break down our local forecast, but we take a look at everything that's ongoing that could influence the weather here in Central Florida. And what we have here is a psychedelic graphic of our jet stream. The colors are going to be your winds, and the white lines are what are called heights. Where you have higher heights, there's more warmth, the air expands, and where it's colder, the air sinks or it shrinks, just like the rubbers or the plastics on your vehicles outside. You ever go outside and notice that after a very cold night, suddenly your TPMS, your tire pressure sensor's on? Hey, why do I have low pressure? I don't have a leak in my tires. It's because the air pressure inside has shrank. And so now the sensors on your vehicle are thinking there's not enough air pressure in the tire. So be leery of that. Doesn't mean you have to fill up. Just drive it around a little bit, let that air warm up, and it'll expand back to normal. So as we mentioned earlier at the start of the discussion, and I'll try not to be too long-winded here, we have the trough coming in. This is Thursday, and as I go through Friday and then into Saturday, right about there, notice that now over Florida, we have that trough axis digging in to the peninsula. That's what's going to help to drop our temperatures pretty rapidly into the upper 20s and low 30s. And I want to add the disclaimer, just as Thomas did. We're not talking wind chills this time. Some of you out there saw all the graphics and the reports about the wind chills being in the 20s and the 30s about a week or so ago. We're talking actual air temperature this time, which is why we do have some watches and some potential advisories that are going to be rolling out over the next 24 hours. And then it gets interesting. So as that trough kicks through, notice what happens over the central United States that slowly builds in over us. See how those white lines start to flow west-southwest to east-northeast? That's a sign that we no longer have that cold trough extending over the eastern U.S., and we're going to start to warm up. And then if you turn your attention out over to the western United States, we have another big old bowling ball cold pocket, I'll call it, that's going to be working its way through California and the desert Southwest. And as this progresses along, we are watching for some enhanced weather activity along the leading edge. And I'll stop the clock right here because the key takeaway over the next couple days is notice how our contours are now lifting out of the south. They're no longer sinking towards the south. They're going up towards the north. That's a sign that we are going to quickly warm up over the next couple days. And when I say couple days, it will start as early as Saturday afternoon. We're going to start the day frozen pretty much. The afternoon, we're going to warm up into the 60s more than likely. This is for as we go through the day today. Notice that the frost freeze line is still up in the panhandle where the snow is still hanging out. But as you fast forward and go through Friday morning, see it's starting to sink south, and then as we go through Friday, further progression, and then overnight Saturday, bam, after the sun sets, we have that frost freeze line where you have your freezing temperatures extending down through Tampa, almost approaching the Port St. Lucie area and the Fort Myers, southwest Florida part of the peninsula. So that's how far to the south it does make its way, the invasion, as we wrote on Click Orlando earlier this morning. And then watch this as I fast forward. Bam. Who done it and ran is the saying I like to say. That frost freeze line and those cold temperatures rapidly retrograde back to the north, and we're left with pretty decent conditions as we go through the weekend, at least Sunday. We still have to get through Friday night and Saturday morning, and as a result, if you look, we have the cold weather advisory in place for your Friday morning, tomorrow morning, with the wind chills dipping the feels-like temperatures into the 20s and the 30s. And then you follow that up with Friday night into Saturday, and we have the freezing conditions that are really going to settle in for our northern counties. So the freezing temperatures are going to be felt by us tonight, Thursday into Friday. And then the true air temperatures that could freeze us and create some frost out there, especially for our northern counties, talking Marion, Lake, upper portions of Sumter County, Seminole County, Flagler, Volusia County. All you folks on the north side of our viewing area will likely wake up to the upper 20s, low 30s by Saturday. But regardless, as we showed you yesterday, today we're looking at a high temperature of upper 40s, low 50s. I know it says Wednesday. I didn't have time to update this, but the same general thinking is there. And then by Sunday, you see that we rapidly climb into the 70s, and we get even warmer from there before our next possible storm system. We'll be talking as we go over the next couple of days. And then finally, to wrap everything into a nice bundle, look at your 7-day, see how fast we climb up out of these Arctic temperatures. Starting today with a high of 47 in the greater Orlando, up to 55 on Friday. And then look at how quickly, by Saturday, 60, Sunday, 70. And then we hold steady Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday thanks to the cloud cover, kind of keeping things more mild and average, a bit of normalcy for the state of Florida, which is, I'm sure, a welcome change for a lot of us before we start pinpointing that next storm system that could come out of the not the Caribbean. What the heck? You can see I'm still in tropics mode somehow.
You got it on the
Take
brain.
two. I know it's take 6, but that's take 2. Anyways, y'all, we have quite a bit of a whiplash setup going on over the next 7 days, so have fun with it. Stay safe and protect yourselves, whether it be immune system, physically, or just even in terms of household appliances, your pipes, and especially the plants and animals. Make sure to bring them inside.
Yeah. I like the cold. I'm from the Northeast originally. I've mentioned it probably several times. I'm sure our Take 6 viewers are sick of hearing me talk about it. But the 70s sound pretty nice right now. It's chilly in the morning. My cat's upset all the time now. So we could use the warm up.
Rain. Get rid of the sprinkling of the rain.
Yeah,
If it's gonna rain. If not, just stop.
Yeah, exactly. The cold is fine. The rain is fine. The together, no thanks. I'm over that for sure.
Agree.
Real quick before I let you go, the debate we've had in the newsroom is between the people who have and have not yet turned on their heat. I'll admit I've turned on my heat. Have you?
I think a couple times. I definitely crank the heat in the car. That's for sure.
Okay.
I make sure that thing's warmed up, and I'll crank the heat. But I don't usually touch the temperature in the house too much. We're pretty well insulated, thankfully. At least I would say.
Well, good for you, man. We had to turn it up a little bit. Just the tile floors, it was too much first thing in the morning.
That is true. That's very true. I can feel that for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will let you go. Thank you again for your time and your expertise, David. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely, Thomas. Have a good one.
You as well. Okay, now we are shifting gears a little bit. We are going to be talking about a court hearing that happened today down in the Osceola County area. A gentleman who is accused of firing off his gun during New Year's, resulting in the death of a woman, his neighbor, was in court today. He ended up being denied bond. News 6's Angie Casada was following that story.
I'm here outside the Osceola County Courthouse where Carlos Tejada's legal team argued for his release on bond, citing his lack of felony criminal record. But in the end, the judge denied both motions. 44-year-old Carlos Tejada faced a judge this morning regarding his request for bond. Tejada is charged with manslaughter by culpable negligence in connection with the death of 56-year-old Carmen Ochoa. Both families emotional present in court. Tejada is accused of firing multiple guns in his backyard just after midnight on New Year's Day, leading to the tragic death of Ochoa, who was standing over 100 yards away across a retention pond in her screened pool area enjoying the fireworks with her daughters. Investigators say Tejada was firing guns in celebration when a stray bullet struck and killed Ochoa.
Is this the defendant's backyard?
Yes.
And these yellow markers, what does that show us?
Each marker typically represents a single casing.
Detectives say 77 shell casings were found in Tejada's backyard. Today in court, the lead detectives were called to the witness stand and cross-examined. Prosecutors even presented a video captured on the victim's phone as she recorded the fireworks near her backyard moments before she was killed. In it, you hear both fireworks exploding and gunshots ringing out before she gets hit with the bullet. Tejada's defense argues there's no direct evidence tying him to the guns and requested bond, even proposing surrendering Tejada's passport and agreeing to electric.
The defendant will be held with no bond on the charge of manslaughter by culpable negligence.
After considering both arguments, the judge denied the motion for bond, ruling that Tejada will remain in custody pending trial. The court also addressed the motion challenging the constitutionality of Tejada's detention, which was also denied. Of course, we'll update you as that becomes available on air and over on clickorlando.com. Reporting in Osceola County, Angie Casada, Getting Results, News 6.
As Andy said, we'll continue to be following that case as it makes its way through the courts, and you can find all of our coverage on clickorlando.com. We're going to be taking a break right now, but we'll be coming back in about 2 minutes, taking a look at how popular weight loss drugs are starting to impact more than just waistlines, starting to impact the economy and what people are buying. That'll be coming up as well as a look at the latest episode of Florida Foodie that came out on Tuesday. If you haven't listened to it yet, you'll want to hear this great interview we had with the owner of Brewlando. That's all coming up in just a few minutes. All right, the time now is 12:46. Thank you for joining us on Take 6. If you're just joining us, I'm streaming executive producer Thomas Mates, filling in for Julie Broughton, who is out on assignment. She'll be back coming up on News 6 at 4 with your forecast. You've probably heard in the news recently about a product line of drugs that are designed to help people lose weight. They go by names like Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy, Zepbound. There's a slew of them, and many Americans are taking these now. Some estimates put it as many as 1 in 8 Americans, and certainly many more are probably considering it. I know I certainly have. But those drugs are also starting to impact more than just people's weight. It's also starting to impact the economy. News 6 anchor Lisa Bell went to find out more about this.
I literally had to buy everything new, from bathing suits to pants to shirts.
Dr. George Carroll has been helping patients lose weight for more than 40 years. But he says when so-called GLP-1 drugs made from semaglutide or tirzepatide hit the market, it was a game changer.
So when these first came out just a few years ago, even though you had decades of working in the weight loss industry, you wanted to try this yourself before you started prescribing it to your patients.
Yes, I did. I wanted to see, well, A, does it really work like all the hype says? Plus, I needed to lose weight. And so, yes, I went on it and was very successful. I wound up losing 45 pounds.
And it happened in a matter of months.
And that's when I realized I didn't have a single piece of clothing to wear, not one.
So what'd you do?
Well, I honestly, my shirts didn't fit because I was in a 2X, double X. I didn't have a single pair of pants that I could wear because I wore a size 40, and now I was a size 36. I had to get all my jewelry resized because it was slipping off my fingers. I found my wedding band in my lap one day when I was sitting there watching television.
And he is not alone. Clothing retailers are cashing in on slimmer waistlines. In fact, a recent poll found 1 in 8 Americans has taken a GLP-1 drug. And in 2023, BMI and obesity in the U.S. decreased for the first time in more than a decade. The most notable decrease in the South, and changing waistlines appear to be changing bottom lines as well. A recent study from Cornell found households with at least one GLP user reduced grocery spending by about 6% in 6 months. Higher income households cutting spending even more, nearly 9%, with high-calorie processed foods taking the biggest hit, including an 11% decline in spending on savory snacks. Fast food chains and coffee shops reportedly also seeing drops during breakfast and dinner times. On the flip side, Cornell researchers say sales of yogurt and fresh produce are up. Companies like Nestle now trying to claw back consumers with new products specifically targeting GLP-1 users, as millions of Americans continue to shell out money for these weight loss medications.
Because it works and it's very successful. And one person tells the next person, the mother tells the daughter tells her friend, and that's why 1 in 8, because it's something that is truly a game changer and is very successful.
That is really quite something. I was unaware of any of that before I started watching Lisa's package earlier today. Again, that was News 6 anchor Lisa Bell. She has more of her story on clickorlando.com, and you can watch her tonight on News 6 this afternoon. Also, speaking of Lisa, you may know that she is also one of the co-hosts of Florida Foodie, the podcast which I actually produce, and she co-hosts with Candace Campos. The new episode just came out on Tuesday, and Lisa got the chance to sit down with Candace, with the owner of Brewlando, one of the few female owners of a microbrewery, craft brewery in the United States. Here's a portion of their conversation with her. And you can check out the whole thing right now on clickorlando.com/Florida Foodie. But let's get a little taste right now.
We are so happy to be joined today by Shara Patak, who is the founder of Brewlando. Thank you so much for joining us on Florida Foodie.
Thank you guys for having me. This is exciting.
Well, you're telling me, because you brought lots of treats, which unfortunately I don't think we can really indulge in a whole lot.
But give me just a few hours.
No, but we can already smell like some of the aromas coming from the wine and the brews. It is amazing. First of all, tell us a little bit about about your background, because as Candace mentioned, you're one of the very few female minority-owned breweries in the country.
2%, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So it was not something that I intended to jump into. I owned a building and had a tenant in there that was a microbrewery, and supported them through the infancy of their brand, which was approximately 3 years. And COVID, affected their business like so many other businesses. And finally, in December of 2019, they decided that they were going to shelf it. So at that time, I actually was going to put the lock on the door, and I was going to give it to a business broker. And the employees reached out to me, and it was 2 weeks before Christmas. And for people who know me well, I have a very, very soft heart, which sometimes gets me into trouble. But I really thought long and hard about it, and I decided that if they could sell enough of the beer, which remained from the inventory from Castle Church, which was the brewery that was there before, that I would continue giving them a paycheck. So I said, I'll keep the lights on if you guys sell the beer, and you have a job here until you find another job. And that was how this started.
That was very kind, a nice Christmas gift.
Yeah. So were you a big beer fan prior to that?
Truth be told, not particularly. I do enjoy a nice beer, and it actually was one of the reasons that I helped that brewery as much as I did, because I really felt like they had exceptional quality beer. You could just taste the difference, and so I just felt like it would be a matter of time if I helped them along and pushed them across, that eventually they'd be able to forge ahead.
And this is in a location kind of near Orlando International Airport on Hoffner, just to give people an idea of this building that you had been leasing out to these people.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. It's 5 miles from MCO. It occupies 50% of a 20,000 square foot building, and so the brew house and tap room is actually 10,000 square foot, which is very big compared to the average size of microbreweries. It was one of the things that I actually was not really concerned about, but I was quite surprised by when they were building out, because it was such a large space. They invested in very expensive equipment, the best of the best German brewing equipment, and usually you walk into a microbrewery and it's a relatively small space.
So sometimes almost feels like family owned, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And we do have that at Brewlando. It's something that we work hard to foster as our community spirit, but it's a pretty big tap room and brew house out there.
That was a really great interview that we had. She was very giving of her time. I highly recommend you listen to the whole thing, and you can find it all on clickorlando.com/FloridaFoodie. Again, clickorlando.com/FloridaFoodie. There you can also find all the foodie news happening in Central Florida. We try and stay up to date on all the comings and goings of restaurants and chefs and everything that has to do with food in Central Florida. And again, of course, you can see the Brewlando episode is right there. You can also find it on the clickorlando.com, or the News 6 the News 6 WKMG YouTube page, and of course you can download the podcast, the audio only version, from anywhere you get podcasts, including Apple Music, Google Music, Spotify, wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. Florida Foodie is available, and I hope that you give it a listen. Well, that will do it for us here on Take 6. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, Julie Broughton will be back tomorrow here in the hosting chair. She'll also be back on News 6 at 4 with your forecast. And, of course, we'll have all the day's headlines for you to close out your day coming up starting on News 6 at 4. You can always find the latest news on clickorlando.com as well. And, again, check out clickorlando.com/FloridaFoodie for all of the food news happening here in Central Florida. Thank you so much for your time today. We hope that you have a pleasant day.